They used to say Willow Creek was the kind of place where time stood still, where dust danced with the wind and silence weighed heavier than lead. The kind of town where men worked hard, drank harder, and buried their dead with their own hands. But on one scorching morning in June of 1871, time decided to run, and it took everything with it, including blood. Jeremiah Black was no hero, just a broken man trying to start over. After the war, he traded his rifle for leather, swapped the battlefield for a dry and fertile patch of land where nothing grew but thorns and grit. Yet even there, among skinny chickens and half-dead corn, he found something he hadn't known since he buried his brothers in arms: peace. His wife, Mary, was the light in that cursed land, as greener than the prairie grass, and a laugh that made you forget death even existed. Their son, Thomas, was 8, stubborn as a mule and brave as his old man. On that particular Sunday, Mary was baking bread, Thomas played with a wooden horse his father had carved, and Jeremiah cleaned his shotgun. Not from fear, just from habit. Then the dogs started barking. At first, Jeremiah thought it was a coyote, but the barks turned to whimpers. Then came silence, the kind of silence that means death is near. When he looked up, a column of dust was rising on the road. Riders, 5, 6, maybe 7. Faces covered. Hats pulled low. They weren't here to talk. Mary appeared in the doorway, apron dusted in flour. "Jeremiah," she said. But there was no time. The first shots came fast, sharp as the crack of a whip. Jeremiah sprinted for his son, but Thomas was already down, the wooden horse shattered beside his lifeless body. Mary ran toward him. A single shot tore through her chest. Jeremiah screamed. Then the world turned red. He woke to flames. The house groaned as the fire chewed through timber. Jeremiah staggered outside, his shoulder searing in pain, grazed by a bullet. He dropped to his knees. Mary lay cold. Thomas beside her. Lifeless. Gone. 7 men came to Willow Creek that morning. 7 men left with nothing in their way. But they didn't take Jeremiah's soul. That, they failed to kill. The villagers arrived too late. All that remained were ashes. Some said it was the work of a gang that had been hitting ranches across the frontier. But Jeremiah knew better. This wasn't a robbery. It was a message. He dug 2 graves with his own hands. No words. Just sweat and dirt and tears. Then he rode into town and sat alone in the saloon. Bottle in front of him. Revolver on the table. No one dared speak. He didn't care. All he wanted now were names. A man sat across from him, a grizzled, one-eyed relic known as Pastor Eli. Not a real pastor. Just carried a Bible stuffed with bullets. "They call themselves the 7 Crows," he said. "And they don't kill for gold. They kill for pleasure." Jeremiah didn't reply. Just nodded. The hunt had begun. The next day, Jeremiah rode south to Dry Hollow, a town rotting from the inside. Pastor Eli said one of the 7 Crows was there, Reed Holloway, the White Crow. A backstabbing coward who killed silently. Jeremiah arrived, face sunburned, eyes hollow. Inside the saloon, he said one name. Reed Holloway. The barkeep glanced upstairs. That was enough. Reed was with a red-haired woman. When Jeremiah entered, he asked, "Reed Holloway?" The man turned, wide-eyed. A shot to the chest ended him. The woman screamed. Jeremiah left in silence. 3 guards waited outside. 2 died in seconds. The 3rd ran. Jeremiah didn't chase. Eli met him at Bitter River. "One down," said Jeremiah. "Next is Cain Mercer, the Bloody Crow. Works for a crooked judge in Redemption Gulch." Jeremiah found the town ruled by fear. Mercer laughed as he beat a starving man in court. Jeremiah waited. 1 clean shot to the head. Dead. The judge panicked. "I just passed messages. I didn't order anything." Jeremiah pulled the trigger. "You passed the wrong message." The judge's blood soaked the courthouse. Eli handed him a map. Next, Harlan Shaw, the Blind Crow. Ex-military. Fortified in Dry Wolf Desert. Surrounded by dynamite and men. Jeremiah's jaw tightened. The fire of vengeance burned hotter. 3 weeks had passed since Jeremiah blew out Ethan Cooper's throat in the Serpent Daurada camp. That bastard's blood still clung to his dreams. But it wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed all of them, one by one. On the dirt trail that cut through the Red Hollow Mountains, the wind blew cold, and the birds didn't sing. Eli, paler by the day, rode beside Jeremiah. The old man could barely speak. He had fever, coughed blood, and his eyes were sunken like someone already seeing the end. "There's still time to turn back," Eli said Jeremiah one morning as they warmed their hands by the fire. The old man replied through clenched teeth. I'll go back when hell calls me. Until then, you won't walk alone. The list of names burned in Jeremiah's pocket, but it was Marcus Dole, the second in line, who now filled his thoughts. They called him the Butcher, not for killing animals, but for butchering people like cattle. A brood of nearly 7 feet, rotting teeth and soulless eyes. According to Eli, Dole now worked as the bodyguard for a corrupt sheriff in the town of Red Hollow. The town has laws, explained the old man, but they're the sheriff's laws. And that sheriff pays Marcus Dole to do the jobs he doesn't want to dirty his hands with. Jeremiah gripped the handle of his revolver. This would be different. In Red Hollow, killing one of the crows meant facing an entire town. When they arrived, they saw Red Hollow was a cesspool of rot disguised as civilization. Armed men patrolled the streets. Children ran barefoot between open sewers. A sinister sign saying, "No outsiders without sheriff's permission," hung at the entrance of the only hotel. The saloon reeked of alcohol, dry blood, and lies. Jeremiah and Eli set up quietly in an abandoned shed on the outskirts. For 2 days, they watched. Eli used a spyglass and took notes despite the fever. Marcus Dole sleeps behind the warehouse, in an old building. But he only shows up at night, when he escorts the sheriff to the brothel. "How many with him?" asked Jeremiah. 3 men always on horseback. 1 lookout on the roof. And they say he carries a butcher's axe in place of a holster. Sadistic bastard. On the 3rd night, Jeremiah decided to move. He put on the dark jacket, strapped bullets to his belt, and tied the rifle to his back. Eli wanted to go too, but he could barely stand. "I'll be back before sunrise," said Jeremiah, covering the old man with a blanket. Eli grabbed his arm and murmured, "Don't hesitate, son. None of them deserve mercy." The town slept uneasily. Even at midnight, the saloon boiled with drunkards and forced laughter. Jeremiah moved through the shadows, using silence as armor. He circled the warehouse to the side alley, where Marcus Dole's slaughter shack stood dark and foul-smelling. The stench of rotten blood filled the air. 2 guards were laughing quietly, smoking cigars. Jeremiah waited for the right moment. One of them turned his back. A silent swoosh, knife to the throat. The other tried to scream, but took a bullet to the gut before the sound could escape. Jeremiah entered the building. Marcus Dole was there. Sweaty shirt, filthy hands, sharpening a butcher's axe on a wooden bench. The man looked up and let out a guttural laugh. Well, another lamb for the slaughter?" Jeremiah didn't answer. The blood in his eyes said it all. Dole raised the axe faster than anyone his size should be. The blow came within inches of Jeremiah's face, splitting the wall behind. Jeremiah rolled, drew his pistol, and fired 1, 2, 3 shots. 2 hit Dole in the chest, but the man didn't fall. He charged like a bull. Jeremiah fired again. A shot to the knee. Dole screamed, collapsed sideways, but still fought, crawling like a monster. His hand reached for the axe. Jeremiah stepped on it and aimed the gun between the brute's eyes. For Mary. For Thomas. The shot silenced the night. Jeremiah stumbled out of the shack, covered in blood that wasn't his. The town was beginning to wake. He ran to the shed where he'd left Eli. But Eli was no longer breathing. The old man had died silently, still holding the map with the names of the remaining targets. A shaky note rested on his chest. "They all deserve to die. But you deserve to live after. Eli." Jeremiah dropped to his knees, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He buried the old man at the foot of a twisted tree, far from the corrupted streets. There was no prayer. Just dirt and tears. That night, he left alone. Now 5 remained. The next name on the list was Abel Grant, a fanatic gunslinger who had become the leader of a cult in the ruins of an abandoned mission. Rumor had it he killed in the name of God, saying each bullet was an act of purification. Jeremiah rode toward the Black Mountains, where Reverend Grant preached to armed followers. This would be a different kind of battle, against blind faith, delusion, and men who believed killing was salvation. Upon arriving at the village surrounding the old mission, Jeremiah instantly knew he was in Abel's territory. All the men wore carved bullet crucifixes. The women had veils. Children sang hymns with empty eyes. The air reeked of incense and gunpowder. He entered the old church at sunset. Abel Grant preached before an altar made of bones. He wore a black cassock, long beard, piercing blue eyes. "Brothers," Grant shouted, "the blood of sinners will be the new wine. Fire will purify us." Jeremiah approached slowly. The faithful turned. Abel Grant recognized the stranger at once. "Sin has arrived among us, brothers." Cast him out with iron and flame. The followers drew their weapons. Jeremiah dove behind a pew. The first volley shattered the stained glass. He returned fire with brutal precision, taking down 3 men in seconds. The church turned into a war zone. Grant fled through the back, shouting verses while shooting. Jeremiah chased him through the old mission's smoky hallways. They exchanged fire until they reached the inner courtyard. Grant fell to his knees, wounded. You don't understand. I'm cleansing the world, and I'm cleansing it of you. The final shot echoed through the mission's walls. Now, 3 were dead, and 4 names still burned on the list. Horace Flint, Doyle Blackrain, Nathan Crow, and finally, Silas Kane. Jeremiah rode eastward. The scars on his body grew. His soul was no longer the same, but vengeance still burned. And hell was only just beginning. Jeremiah rode like a man who no longer felt cold, hunger, or fear, only the weight. The weight of 3 bodies buried, Mary, Thomas, Eli, and the weight of 4 bastards he had sent to hell with his own hands. But there were still 4 alive, and until each one fell, Jeremiah would not rest. Next stop, Horace Flint, the mute crow, a hired killer who cut out the tongues of his victims before killing them. He had worked with the 7 crows as an informant and torturer. Now he was hiding in Bitterglass, a mining town isolated by cliffs and mist, where everything seemed damp and rotten. Jeremiah arrived at night. The town was too quiet. There were no children, no laughter, only the clink of tools and hurried footsteps. In the local tavern, a middle-aged woman with a face marked by scars gave him the first clue. You're not from around here, she said, with a sad look. You're here for Horace, aren't you? Jeremiah didn't respond, but he didn't need to. He lives in the mine tunnels. He's become a rat. But he's dangerous. He kills for fun. And no one has the guts to face him. No one, except you, I guess. Jeremiah entered the mine before dawn. He carried a lantern, a knife, and 2 revolvers. The air was dense. The silence, absolute. The rusted rails twisted through tunnels and caverns, and the echo of dripping water sounded like distant laughter. After an hour of exploring, he saw the sign, a crow symbol carved into a wooden plank nailed to the wall. That was it. A shot came from the darkness. It missed by inches. Jeremiah extinguished the lantern and moved blindly. Horace Flint didn't need light. He knew those tunnels like the back of his hand. But Jeremiah used sound, instinct, smell. Another shot. It came from above. Jeremiah rolled to the side, felt dust fall from the ceiling. A shadow darted past, fast, agile. And then, silence. Suddenly, a whisper in his ear. Do you miss her screams? Jeremiah spun and fired. The body fell from a ledge. It was Horace, with a twisted smile and no tongue. His eyes still gleamed with cruelty. Jeremiah spat on the ground. You'll burn in silence now. And walked out of the mine. Next was Doyle Rain, known as Black Rain, a former bounty hunter who had traded law for blood. It was said he wore a soaked cloak even under the sun, as if it were always night around him. He roamed the lands between New Hope and Red River, leading a band of nomads who raided trains and ranches. Jeremiah tracked the gang for days, finding only the ashes of their deeds, a burned village, bodies hanging from trees, horses skinned alive. It was like following the devil's trail. He found them camped in the Rattlesnake Hills. He waited for nightfall. Like a shadow, he crept toward the tents. One by one, he killed the guards with his knife. Absolute silence. 3 remained. Doyle stepped out of his tent smoking a cigar, as if he already knew. So it's you, the crow that fell from the nest. Jeremiah aimed the revolver. You burned Willow Creek. I burned many places. But I remember that village. I remember a woman screaming while the boy begged. The shot ended the words halfway. It hit the shoulder. Doyle spun, fell, tried to draw his gun. But Jeremiah was faster. 2 more shots. 1 in the knee, 1 in the chest. The third hit him right in the eye, and Doyle saw nothing more. Now there were 2 left. The penultimate one was Nathan Crow, the Blue Crow, a meticulous mercenary, former military strategist. He hadn't killed for impulse, but for calculation. It had been him who planned Willow Creek, the real brain behind the massacre. And now, he was personal bodyguard to a senator in Denver. Jeremiah didn't hesitate. He dressed as a coachman, infiltrated among the senator's servants, and waited. One evening, when Crow walked toward the private hall of the mansion, Jeremiah cornered him in the garden, under the dim light of lanterns. I know that look, said Nathan. You lost everything, didn't you? I didn't lose. It was taken from me. Nathan slowly raised his pistol, unafraid. He was cold as ice. The duel was fast. 1, 2, 3 shots. 2 missed. 1 hit Jeremiah's shoulder. But he struck Nathan in the chest. Nathan fell to his knees. You don't understand. It wasn't personal. It was a message. Now it is. The last shot tore through his throat. There was only one name left. Silas Kane. The leader. The man who gave the order. Who chose Willow Creek as an example. A former banker who founded the Seven Crows gang to control the gold and railroad routes in the West. A manipulator who lived like a ghost. No one knew where, only that he was always one step ahead. But now he knew Jeremiah was coming. A letter was delivered to the camp where Jeremiah treated his wounded shoulder. It was handwritten in refined calligraphy. Mr. Black, I am impressed by your persistence. You killed all of my brothers. I wonder, is there anything left in you besides hatred? If you want to find me, come to Devil's Spire. I'll be waiting. It was a trap. But Jeremiah didn't care. Devil's Spire was an isolated plateau, surrounded by cliffs and ravines. The climb was narrow and treacherous. At the top, an old wooden cabin stood, where the wind howled like lament. Jeremiah climbed on foot, a rifle on his back, 3 bullets in the chamber. That was all he needed. Silas Kane waited on the porch. Gray hair, clean suit, a glass of whiskey in hand. Took you long enough, he said with a smile. Sit. Let's talk like gentlemen. Jeremiah stopped a few meters away. You're no gentleman. Just a coward in a tie. And you, think you found justice? Killed 7 men. And what did you gain? Silence? Nightmares? Jeremiah raised the revolver. I gained the chance to end you. You're going to kill me now? No trial? No words? You had your trial. In Willow Creek. Silas tried to draw a small pistol hidden under the bench. But Jeremiah was already ready. The shot was dry. Straight to the forehead. Silas fell backward like a puppet with cut strings. Jeremiah stayed there for hours, sitting on the porch. The sun was rising. Crows cried in the distance. For the first time, he cried. Not for pain, but for everything that would never come back. Mary, Thomas, Eli, all avenged. But the soul still ached. He descended the mountain slowly, buried the revolver in the desert, let the hat fly in the wind, and rode off into the unknown. Maybe, just maybe, there was life after vengeance.